All right? So I think that's an important thing to think about. Now the companion question to that, and here's my story for that. Back in 2004, most years for the last 5 years in the fall, I've run a software executive summit where we bring together executives from software organizations, and these people are normally the top technical executive in their organization. Most of these people have more than 50 people reporting under them. A lot of them have more than 100. Many of them will have over a few hundred people reporting to them. So these are not just project managers or even second-level managers. They're directors and VPs and so on. And so one of the talks we had was by Kent Beck, the guy who invented extreme programming. And somebody asked a question, and Kent gave this long explanation, which basically involved the statement that there was a project where the project team had done really excellent technical work, but once the project got out into the marketplace, the product ended up failing, and the team ended up getting disbanded. And so Kent characterized this project as a technical success, but a marketing failure. And when those words came out of his mouth, technical success, but a business failure, it was amazing. Probably 80% of the executives in the room raised their hands simultaneously, and most of them basically voiced the exact same comment, which is, we don't believe that exists. The idea that a market failure is not a technical success. It's a misdiagnosis of the market by the technical staff. It's poor communication by the technical staff with the marketing function. It's technical staff not being aggressive enough in eliciting meaningful market information. But at the executive level, you have to take responsibility for that. You can't just say it's a technical success but a marketing failure. That doesn't exist. And so I thought that was a very interesting comment, and I thought it was what was perhaps to me the most interesting part was just how vigorous and how it wasn't unanimous, but it was a very strong consensus. How strong the consensus of the executives in that room was that that was the right way to look at it, that you can't say technical success and marketing failure. Now the corollary question to that is, can you have a mediocre software organization inside a world-class business? And I think that's a pretty telling question as well. And this is something that here locally we have seen a charge that we've seen leveled at Microsoft for the last 15, 20 years. We have seen lots of people who are outside of the software industry or maybe inside the software industry but not particularly big Microsoft fans say things like, well, Bill Gates is a business genius, Microsoft is a fantastic marketing machine, but their software is terrible, and they have crummy software and not very good software development skills. They're just a great marketing machine. And I'm gonna challenge that too. The idea that you can have a mediocre software organization inside a world-class business, and I think that certainly over much of the last 25 years, you have to give Microsoft credit for being at least a world-class business. Is it really possible to have a mediocre software organization inside a world-class business? And I would contend that it's not necessarily the best software organization in the world, but to say that it's mediocre belies the fact that that software organization has to be at least good enough to support the other attributes of that world-class business. And so to say that the software organization is mediocre, in some sense is saying it's not effective at doing its job. But if it's effective enough to provide the support needed for the rest of the business to be world-class, I think it's very tough to say that it's not effective, because in fact it is doing its job of supporting the rest of the business in being world-class. Now I would expect after you have a chance to think about that for somebody to want to argue with me about that, but that's my going-in position. So my view of world-class software doesn't have all that much to do, well, in some sense, doesn't have as much to do with software as you might think. It has to do with company success. Do the software development practices support the business objectives? How low is the resistance between the software organization and the business needs of the organization? And just really going back to my first point, how well does the software organization support the business? And so I think that there are several factors we could look at for software development success. I think a successful organization is one that provides software on time, on budget, with desired functionality, at the defined quality level, and in a sustainable way. And I think that pretty much covers what we normally think of as an effective software organization. If you take out any of those attributes, I think that you could certainly challenge, is that really a world-class software organization? If it's not sustainable, well, this is the charge there. The problem we often have with startup companies where it works for a while, but then it sort of collapses under its own weight. If it's not at a defined quality level, again, that can work for a while, but eventually the market catches up with you and decides that it doesn't want low-quality software. I mean, again, it can work for a while. If it doesn't produce desired functionality, the market may never like the software in the first place. On budget, your company may not actually be viable if you can't produce software in an economically efficient way. And on time, certainly a good way to lose market share and not be competitive. So I think each of those is actually pretty important. My blog is titled 10x Software Development, and I think that there's a good overlap here between some of the thoughts I've had in the 10x area and world-class software organizations. As I've written quite a few times now, one of the most replicated results in software engineering research is the idea that there are at least 10x differences between different developers at the same levels of experience. And the consensus of studies since the late 1960s has been that difference in productivity is really closer to 20x than it is to 10x. But 10x is a kind of an easy way to describe that. Interestingly enough, researchers have also found 10x differences between different organizations working on similar products. And I think what that implies, among other things, is that you don't tend to find that full 20x range in productivity differences within a given organization. What you tend to find is organizations hire from the top end of the talent pool or the bottom end of the talent pool or the middle, but they don't tend to hire from the top end and the bottom end. Of course, there are always exceptions, but in the main, they tend to hire from more of a segment of the talent pool. So within an organization, you don't tend to find 10x differences, at least not commonly, but across organizations you do, and indeed applied to entire organizations, you find that level of difference. So let's talk a little bit about what the background is on my selection of world-class software organizations. I am actually going to name names in this talk, and we'll see what you think about that as well. On the consulting basis, my company, Construx Software, works with dozens of companies in depth each year. So we have a chance to get up close and personal pretty often. And I personally do that a fair amount. Other people in my company do it even more than I do. We also provide training to hundreds of companies each year, and even though a lot of times people think of training as the instructor imparting knowledge to the people in the class, we find that's very much a two-way street. And so when we train with a company, we learn a great deal about how those companies operate. We pick up quite a few good insights into those companies too. And whereas we're exposed to dozens of companies a year on the consulting side, we're exposed to hundreds on the training side. We also run events, in particular our Executive Summit, where we have in-depth discussions over a period of days with executives where people can be quite candid in sharing what works and what isn't working in their organizations. We're active at the industry level, participating in IEEE committees through the OMG. We host a local spin group where we share software improvement practices. I have a monthly discussion group for software executives and so on. And then we also have been increasingly in recent years doing original research, such as surveys about practices that are effective and classic mistakes and so on, as well as hosting forum discussions and so on. And of course, we also read the stuff that other people publish. So this is really the basis of the talk of world-class software organizations.